Madam Secretary, is there any other job you'd be interested in? I mean, just comptroller of the state of Illinois or something, you know. Just go back to your, you know what I mean.
Not right now.
Not right now.
Not right now.
Well, let me ask it a different way. When you think about the country, when you think about America right now, and I worry a lot about our country, and you think about what we need to accomplish in the future, what are the priorities on that list for you?
Well, I think, actually, Tom, that's the right way to go at it, because no, because I think we need that kind of discussion in our country. Look, I spent 4 years traveling the world on behalf of the United States, went to 112 countries, nearly 1 million miles, all the statistics, and I came away from that experience even more confident and positive about our model, about our potential. I don't want to sound chauvinistic, but I was very proud to represent the United States. Having said that, leadership is not a birthright that you inherit and it just keeps going. Just as Christine and I were saying, you have to work hard, you have to be prepared, well, so do nations. And we've got some work ahead of us. And it will require us reaching something of a consensus. Now, there will always be disagreements about the particulars, but we've got to figure out how we're going to make our economy produce enough jobs so that particularly young people, the 6 million 18 to 24-year-old Americans who are neither in school nor in work, have a ladder of opportunity that they're able to start climbing, that we produce inclusive prosperity. I'm a product of the American middle class. I am grateful for everything that I was given as a child to prepare me to have a fascinating life, obviously, but I don't want to see other children denied that opportunity. And it is an economic issue, it's a moral issue, it's a political issue, and I want to get back to evidence-based decision-making. There's too much that has gone on in our politics recently that is just pure ideology, pure partisanship, the disguise of commercial interests behind a political facade, and the result is that we're kind of marching backwards instead of forwards. And so, from my perspective, we often reach these points in American history where we're sort of, trying to decide which way we go, whether we consolidate, whether we embrace the future, how we go about doing it. I think it's one of those times. And if we are going to be true to ourselves, we have an election coming up this year, and we ought to be paying attention to that because that will set the parameters for a lot of what can or should be done. As Christine was saying, the administration certainly supported IMF reforms. We think they're in our interest, we think they're in the world's interest, but the Congress got all wrapped up around misconceptions, frankly, and political infighting, mostly against the White House. So I think that we need a very open, evidence-based, mature conversation. Now, that may lead to places that I'm not enthusiastic about, that wouldn't be my choice, but compromise is an essential part of running a great democracy. We cannot afford to have people who deny the right and the need for compromise. So that's what I want to see, Tom, and I want to see it start not just in the editorial pages where you write about this and try to make really the points that I think are important, but we need it at, in people's kitchens and in offices and, on the field watching your kids play soccer. We just need people to start talking and to not be afraid to talk to somebody who disagrees with you. This is one of my biggest problems that I see, because if we don't begin to talk across all the lines that divide us, we will get further and further separate, and we can't afford to do that.
Perfect. A quick follow-up, then I want to conclude with Madame Lagarde. When you look at your time as Secretary of State, what are you most proud of? And what do you feel was unfinished, maybe love to have another crack at one day?
Well, I really see, that was good.
Just sort of slide.
That's why he wins prizes. Look, I really see my role as Secretary, and in fact leadership in general in a democracy, as a relay race. I mean, you run the best race you can run, you hand off the baton. Some of what hasn't been finished may go on to be finished. So when President Obama asked me to be Secretary of State, and I agreed, we had the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We had 2 wars. We had continuing threats from all kinds of corners around the world that we had to deal with. So it was a perilous time, frankly. And what he said to me was, look, I have to be dealing with the economic crisis. I want you to go out and represent us around the world. And it was a good division of labor because we needed to make it clear to the rest of the world that we were going to get our house in order. We were going to stimulate and grow and get back to positive growth and work with our friends and partners. So I think we did that. I'm very proud of the stabilization and the really solid leadership that the administration provided that I think now leads us to be able to deal with problems like Ukraine because we're not so worried about a massive collapse in Europe and China trying to figure out what to do with their bond holdings and all the problems we were obsessed with. I think we really restored American leadership in the best sense that, once again, people began to rely on us, to look at us as, setting the values, setting the standards. I just don't want to lose that because we have a, dysfunctional political situation in Washington. And then, of course, a lot of particulars, but I am finishing my book, so you'll be able to read all about it.
I think you also laid the predicate for the Iran negotiations. Without those sanctions, it's something people don't see, but I think it was very, very
well, I write obviously a whole chapter about this because this is the kind of slow boring of hard boards that Max Weber talks about with politics, but which also applies to diplomacy. It is painstaking, microscopic advantages, and putting together the international coalition to impose tough sanctions on Iran is what eventually changed the calculus inside the Iranian government and brought them to the negotiating table. Now, where it goes from here, we have to wait and see. But it took an enormous amount of effort on the part of a lot of us to put that into motion. So yes, it's part of the work that we did.
Thank you, Secretary Clinton, thank you. Madame Lagarde, I want to conclude with you because I was reading The Economist the other day, and it said that if the European Union were a company, its board would have been sacked. And if it were a football team, it would have been relegated to the second tier. It needs new leadership. Christine Lagarde can be the change. President of the European Commission, which would be very interesting if the President of Europe and the President of America, I had to ask.